Hey there, friends. This is Pastor Jonathan, and I want to thank you for tuning in to this week's Real Talk. Real Talk is a weekly video that we do to talk about what's going on in the life of the church or an idea or concept around our life in Christian community. And normally, Scott Bach Hansen leads this. Today, you get me because we're going to talk about something that's really important in the life of the United Methodist Church, because also it's something that's coming up for us in just a couple of weeks. And so today I'm going to talk to you about this word that's right above me called charge conference. Charge conference sounds like a really churchy word. We're getting ready to have a charge conference on Monday, June 20th at 7 p.m. A charge conference, two important pieces of this. The first word, charge. Charge, I think of right now the NBA Finals are going on. I'm a big basketball fan. I think of when somebody takes a charge in basketball. Sometimes maybe you think of like leading a charge if you're a military person or something like that. In the church context, in the United Methodist Church context, the word charge is used to refer to a place to which a pastor is appointed. In our case, Herndon United Methodist Church is called a single point charge. What that means is that Herndon United Methodist Church is the only church to which I am appointed. There are other areas, even here in Northern Virginia, around the world, where sometimes a pastor serves what's called a multi-point charge. So that means two or more churches are a part of a single pastor's responsibility. So, for example, there's an area in the Eastern Shore of Virginia where there's a pastor who has a 5-point charge. 5 churches that pastor is serving, and those churches are yoked together by that pastor's service and their commitment to share the responsibility of compensating the pastor and that sort of thing. So, charge is the first part of that word, and then conference. Conference is an important word because it's about how we get together. Right? The idea of holy conferencing is a really big deal for us people called Methodists. It's why we do a charge conference every year. It's why we have our annual conference that's about to happen in Hampton in just a couple of weeks, actually just about a week, I should say, and why we have our general conference that meets once every 4 years to think about and work through our book of discipline and how we want to organize our lives together. So charge conference essentially is an opportunity for the membership of a church to gather together and make important decisions about the future of the church. Sometimes it's more present, sometimes it's more future. In this case, we're going to talk a little bit about the future of the church. Something I want to make sure to make clear to you, a charge conference is open to anyone to attend. On Monday, June 20th at 7 p.m., we'll be meeting in our Doe Fellowship Hall. And if you're watching this video, you're welcome to come out and hang out and have a good time. I mean, who doesn't love coming together to a church meeting? When we get to the time where we vote, at charge conferences, we do have to take votes on some things. The voting process is open only to professing members of the church. Because the charge conference usually dictates some things around our finances, our leadership, and that sort of thing, that's the reason why that restriction is there. There are other types of conferences that we can have in a local church setting, like a church conference where everybody can vote. They just don't involve that kind of level of decision making. Anyways, so that's a little bit about what a charge conference is in general. If you have any questions about this, feel free to reach out to me. One other point I'll make before we move into the content of this year's charge conference is that a charge conference typically happens once a year, and if you've been a Methodist for a long time, you probably would recognize this as being something that happens in the fall. Now, we do have a fall charge conference every year. We have to do that usually in October or November to set our pastors' salaries. But in our case, because our fiscal year runs from July 1 to June 30, we do our annual charge conference. That's kind of the larger decision-making kind of effort of our church in the spring or early summertime as opposed to in the fall. So that's just one little distinction that we have here at Herndon United Methodist Church. So with that, let me tell you a little bit about a couple of things you're going to hear about at Charge Conference on June 20th. I want to mention that this is just an introduction to all of this. Next week, we're going to have another Real Talk that's focused on our Charge Conference. It's going to go a little bit more into some of the details around the big ideas and drivers for this year's Charge Conference. So the first thing I want to mention that we're going to be talking about is our budget. We need to approve a budget for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. Our resource management team has been meeting for several months now and discerning how we would like to structure a budget for our church community and what we would want to recommend to our church about how we might be budgeting our life together in the year ahead. And there are a couple of things that have come to light about how we do budgeting and some things that we're going to have to address as we gather together. The first is that we have a mortgage. Some of you will know this, some of you might not know this. When we built the Doe Fellowship Hall back in the late 2000s, that wasn't free. I wish it were, but it took a little bit of money to do that. And so we continue to hold a loan for Doe Fellowship Hall. Now, one of the things that is interesting about commercial real estate, which this is considered commercial real estate, is that loans for that work a little bit different than they do for residential real estate. Over time, those loans have what are called balloon payments. And when those balloon payments come, the organization through which we finance our mortgage offers us the opportunity to reevaluate the rate at which our mortgage is financed. We have a balloon payment coming in September of this year. And so we're in conversation now with the Virginia United Methodist Foundation, which is the body that holds our mortgage, about what our new rate is going to be as of September of 2022. The reason that this is really important is that the rate is likely to fluctuate from where it is right now. And because the rate fluctuates, that means that our monthly mortgage payments might be a little more than they are right now, or they might be a little bit less than they are right now. The other factor that I want to make sure to mention is that we right now are in the middle of paying our apportionments. Apportionments are a figure that are set by the Virginia Annual Conference that's our contribution to the larger work of the United Methodist Church in Virginia and around the world. Every year we are assigned an apportionment, which is based off of our budget, our worship attendance, and some factors like that. And so our apportionment figure has been assigned for the 2022 year. Later this year, we will find out what our apportionment assignment is for the 2023 year. That number may fluctuate. There are some things going on within the United Methodist Church that are likely to be factors in how churches are apportioned in the future. You may recall that we've had a conflict between the United Methodist Church and Boy Scouts of America, and there's a settlement that took place just a couple of months ago that the United Methodist Church is now in process of paying for. And now our annual conference has already figured out that they're going to pay for our portion of that out of our reserves, but now our reserves are a little bit less. So that might be something that impacts apportionment figures in the future. Likewise, there are things going on within the United Methodist Church. There are folks who are saying, hey, we're ready to leave and are getting ready to start their own sort of way of doing church. And so that could be a factor in how we are apportioned. That may mean that we are apportioned more. It may mean we are apportioned less. Those two factors combined, our mortgage and our apportionments, represent some 25% of our annual budget. That's kind of a big part. And because that is in flux, because we aren't sure exactly what that's going to look like, our resource management team has a little bit of an outside-the-box proposal that we're going to be sharing at our Charge Conference on June 20th. The proposal is that we would have a 6-month fixed budget, where we know, hey, this is what we're intending to spend over the months of July through December of 2022. And then what we would add on to that for January through June is a 6-month projection tail. What that means is that it's a little bit more variable, where we need to be able to know, hey, well, what is that mortgage expense going to be? What are those apportionment expenses going to be? And how does that then factor into the rest of our budgeting process? The reason I think this is really important is it allows us to make sure that we're budgeting appropriately for some costs that are fixed. We know that we're going to have to pay our mortgage. We know that we need to pay our apportionments, and we don't have a lot of say in what those figures are. So we need to be able to make sure that we are not hoping for certain figures, but that we're anticipating accuracy there. The other thing this affords us is a chance to do a couple of other things within our budgeting life. Over that 6-month period, one of the things our resource management team has committed to and wants to do, given we approved this at our Charge Conference, is sort of look at 4 areas of how we can better attribute our budgeting life. The first is by thinking strategically about how we do income development. Every year we project what our annual income is going to be, and We try to base that off of our history, off of pledged giving, and a number of other factors. And one of the things that often we've said, whether it's been in resource management or in church council or finance proceeding in previous years, is that, hey, we would love to anticipate an increase in giving. But oftentimes we don't associate that hope with action. In the next 6 months, something we're going to be developing is a donor development team. This is a strategic team that's going to help us to think very concretely about actions that we might take to do both internal and external fundraising. What does that mean? Internal fundraising means how can we encourage folks to be as generous as they can within our church community? External fundraising is about how do we reach out beyond the walls of our church to find ways to tell the story of how God's love is being made real in and through the life that we share here at Herndon United Methodist Church. How do we tell that story well in a way that might compel folks who are not yet part of our church community to be a part of our generosity plan? That, I think, is going to be a really important piece that can really hopefully drive some increases in our giving. Additionally, we want to take a look at some of the key areas of our budget, like our staffing, our building, and our ministries, to be able to make sure that there is definitive alignment with our strategic pursuits and with the vision of our church. We know that we have a great facility, we have great people, and we have great programs that are a part of the Herndon United Methodist Church community. And as we are becoming a relationally centered church, as we are pursuing these strategic pursuits around intergenerational ministry, music outreach, and resilience education, all of these factors become part of how we need to just take a look at our budgeting and say, do we have a budget that matches what we are pointed towards, what our vision is? Do we have a budget that allows us to pursue all those things in the way that God is intending? So budgeting is going to be a big part of this charge conference. You'll be able to get access to a budget projection ahead of time, and next week's Real Talk will likely include some more details about that and what that might look like. The other piece that we're going to be doing at this charge conference that's kind of a key important piece we want to highlight is talking about our governance structure. At our last charge conference this past fall, in the fall of 2021, we affirmed that we as a church are desiring to do a pilot of something called a simplified accountability structure. Previously, we had a church council that would meet along with trustees and SPRC and finance and a wealth of other committees that would meet month to month to do the leadership of our local church. What we decided as a charge conference back in the fall was to try for 6 months a pilot project where we would kind of streamline some of that. Now we have something called a resource management team that does the work of staff parish relations and finance independently, and collaboratively works with our board of trustees to assist with trustee-related matters. Additionally, we have a missions and ministries team that functions in many ways as the guide for collaborating amongst the different ministry areas in the life of the church. These two, I should say these three, with trustees, resource management, and missions and ministries, these each meet once a month, and from those spaces we have action teams that are able to deploy around specific activities or ministry areas to be able to serve and share God's love and community in the best and most effective ways possible. At this charge conference, what we need to be able to do is to do a little bit of evaluation and say, are we ready to take this structure forward and make this how we want to live our life together in community for the foreseeable future? Now, something I want to make a comment on here is that structures evolve and they change. We may say, hey, for now, this is what works for us and we want to keep going with it. And in a year or two, we may say, hey, there's a tweak we need to make here. Or maybe there's some little pivot we need to make here or there. And that's okay to do. What we would be doing by affirming this at this charge conference is saying this is the direction that we hope to move forward in the coming years with. Alternatively, we could say, hey, we need a little bit more time to continue trying it out and tweaking it before we affirm this as our structure moving forward. There is another option where we might say, hey, this hasn't worked and we need to go back to a former way of doing things. What I would say is that last option is really going to be challenging because we're now structured and oriented to meet this kind of governance structure, but it would be important to make sure that that is on the table because ultimately the charge conference needs to be able to make a decision as to what the direction of the church will be. So, two big drivers there. budget and leadership structure. There will be a couple other things that we're doing as well. But I hope you'll be able to find time to come out on the night of June 20th. Again, 7 p.m. We'll be meeting in the Doe Fellowship Hall. And it's an opportunity to have your voice heard, an opportunity to be the church together. And even in a space of meeting, I think it's a chance for the Holy Spirit to do something great, to meet us where we are, but not to leave us as we are. And so I am excited for this time where we're going to gather together. If you have any questions about anything that's been shared in this video or anything related to the Charge Conference or the United Methodist Church or anything like that, feel free to reach out to office@herndonumc.org. We'd love to be in touch with you and be able to answer any questions or thoughts that you might have. I hope this has been helpful. It's good to be with you in Real Talk today. God bless you. Enjoy the day, and we'll see you real soon.